mooring of ships is something you'll all be familiar with at some level or other. At the beginning of my career at sea, I signed on a well-equipped modern bulk carrier, and I remember being struck by how old-fashioned and anachronistic it seemed that you had these large modern ships still being tied up with ropes. So I thought, naively perhaps, that there's had to be a better way of doing things. And yet here we are 40+ years later, and ships are still basically employing the same methods and the same hardware. So why haven't we moved on from that? Well, you can say that it's a system that works, and most of the time it does work well. But above all, it's flexible. It's flexible to an extremely variable operational environment. There have been some advances, of course. A good example of that will be the high modulus synthetic fiber ropes, which are being introduced on ships, but practically, as far as seafarers are concerned, not a lot has changed. Mooring operations are some of the most complex and dangerous tasks on board ship. They are routine operations, but when things go wrong, they can do so in a very damaging and sometimes tragic circumstances. The UK Club frequently deals with mooring-related incidents of serious injury or death to seafarers or shore personnel, as well as collisions and damage to third-party property due to a loss of control. In one incident occurring just last year, a vessel's chief officer and a shore linesman were killed when struck with the same mooring rope which parted while the vessel was shifting ship along the quay. We all therefore have a stake in promoting improved safety awareness and accident prevention in this very important area of ship operations. From our experience, mooring accident investigations will reveal a pattern of failures, which often include communication breakdown, poor working practices, and deficient equipment, or a combination thereof. Clearly, there should be a sufficient number of properly trained seafarers at the mooring stations under the supervision of a responsible officer. Unfortunately, we have seen cases of insufficient deck party manning, or where some crew involved were signed on a ship's engine room ratings rather than being dedicated deck crew. These were vessels which complied with flag state minimum safe manning and crew certification STCW requirements. The progressive reduction in manning levels has coincided with an increase in vessel size, placing additional demands on crew. The mooring decks of large tankers, bulk carriers, container ships cover a huge area, requiring mooring crew to perform as a well-drilled team in circumstances where voice communications or line of sight may be inhibited. Teamwork is key. From the outset, a comprehensive master pilot exchange of information must be carried out and deck parties fully briefed so that all involved personnel have a full appreciation as to how the operation is going to be performed, identifying potential hazards and any control measures. This image is from my collection taken a few years ago. You'll recognize it's the aft mooring deck of a vessel. It's a handy-sized bulk carrier. And you don't have to be a seafarer, you don't have to be an expert to understand there's something going wrong here. It's dirty, it's untidy. There are, incompatible ropes. There are ropes where there shouldn't be. There's no safe access. There's poor identification of hazards. It is, of course, an accident waiting to happen. We can contrast that with this image, similar sort of ship. But again, you don't have to be an expert to understand there's a lot of things going right here. It's first impressions. First impressions are very important if you want to talk about ship inspections and the mindset of ship inspectors. You look at that and you're going to move on. It's clean, it's tidy, there's a good standard of housekeeping. Everything looks well maintained. Good housekeeping, what is that? Good seamanship. The only, perhaps, criticism I may have on that is I would be covering the whole deck with an anti-skid coating rather than just those identified walkways, but a lot of things going right there. Seafarers face many challenges during mooring operations. The mooring arrangements on ships vary widely, and the layout of winches and leads are sometimes poorly designed. Mooring and towing operations exert high loads on lines and equipment, and the variables of weather, berth suitability, the quality of port services, and other factors demand a high degree of planning and efficiency from ships' crews. Mooring, and more particularly the handling of mooring ropes, is an ancient skill and has adapted to larger ships and scaled-up mooring machinery. But the basic risks and exposure to hazards remain the same. Ropes must be handled with great care, and they have an unfortunate habit of punishing the inexperienced, the incompetent, and the complacent. From the few points identified in this slide, and they're by no means exhaustive, of course, I would consider that not standing in the bight of a rope or attempting to control the running out of a rope with your foot are probably the most critical. We do see a lot of accidents relating to that, and we have a very unfortunate example here. This is an image taken from a UK MAIB report, and it described how a seaman trapped his leg in the bight of a rope while the ship was shifting ship along the quay. She was shifting astern, and he was apparently controlling the running out of the rope, perhaps with his foot. He got his foot caught in a loop or bight of the rope, and he was dragged towards the fair lead as the ship was moving astern. He was dragged through the fair lead and into the dock. He lost his life, and indeed in this case they never actually recovered his body. All mooring equipment should be properly cared for, properly maintained, and none more so than the mooring ropes themselves. They should be frequently inspected as part of the planned maintenance system of the ship, and the crew provided with guidance on how to perform that task properly. This is particularly important with the introduction of the high modular synthetic fiber ropes, with which most seafarers are unfamiliar, not just the seafarers, but also people in the office, the operations and the technical staff. Ropes should not, of course, be worked to destruction. There should be a clear criteria for the replacement of ropes. You can see on the images here at the top that you can see some excessive abrasion of a rope. And below you can see two ropes in use which have been spliced, presumably after having previously failed. I mean, these are two conditions which will have the effect of reducing the strength of the rope. Soot and moisture don't go well together. They produce an acidic mixture. And you can see here on the left-hand side what's happened is there's a lot of soot been coming out of the funnel. It's landed on the poop deck, and it's covered all the mooring deck, the mooring machinery, and the ropes. So that acidic mixture will attack the mooring rope, and it will cause degradation and weakening. So it's very important that the ropes are properly protected. And similarly with exposure to sunlight, UV radiation, this will cause ropes to perish. Snapback. This is a critical feature of mooring rope failures. All mooring ropes will stretch to some degree when under tension, and particularly so when constructed of conventional synthetic fibers. When a mooring line parts under load, the sudden release of the stored energy will cause it to recover its original length almost instantaneously. The two ends of the line will recoil or snap back with great velocity, and anybody standing in the way is at great risk of serious injury or death. The direction of travel of the area affected will be quite complex, potentially. It's very difficult to predict, the trajectory of a rope, particularly when they're led around rollers and fair leads. It used to be the convention on mooring decks to mark snapback zones with these sectors, these triangles. You'd see them all around the deck. It has been recognized now that this is not practical at all, and indeed could engender a false sense of security in seafarers. The whole idea is that you're supposed to stand out the way of those yellow sectors, operationally and practically, that is almost a nonsense. So really the convention now is that the whole of the mooring deck should be regarded as a snapback danger area. When we talk about maintenance, that includes, of course, all of the mooring machinery, all of the mooring equipment. And that would, of course, include your winches. An important component of that is your winch brakes. If you have a condition like this, it's fairly extreme, but you can see there's excessive corrosion of the brake bands, excessive corrosion of the drum there, the brake surface, which is obviously going to affect its efficiency. And winches, of course, as rotating machinery, moving machinery, they have to be regularly lubricated. If they're not properly lubricated, then you will have accelerated wear and tear, and that could promote catastrophic failure eventually. You can see on the left-hand side the grease points. Some of them are painted over or even missing. On the right-hand side, this is more like we want to see. You can see that the grease points are conspicuously marked in yellow. So that would say that assists the seafarer in being able to identify them all and not miss any out. And finally, mooring leads. Where you have rollers, they should roll. They should be free to rotate, but at the same time, they shouldn't have excessive looseness or wear. The contact surfaces must be clean. They must be corrosion-free and smooth. We know where you do have corrosion or a rough surface, that again is going to promote rapid deterioration of your mooring ropes. Thank you very much.